On this episode of Africa's Big Switch, Bolaji and I have a conversation with Victor Tobena to discuss commercial and industrial clean energy solutions. Victor is the Chief Commercial Officer at Daystar, a company that provides clean energy power to corporates around Africa. This episode tackles interesting questions like, can solar really carry my AC? And it also takes a deep dive into reasons why companies are making a switch to cleaner energy solutions. We also tackle issues concerning regulations and supply chain management. I do hope you enjoy it.
Hi, Victor. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us today at ABS. It's actually quite a timely, occurrence that we're having this episode because Victor works in a company called Daystar and they have just been acquired by Shell, which is super. So I guess the first question is, how are you feeling, Victor?
Thank you so much for having me and the opportunity. Honestly, I don't have the words to describe how I'm feeling now. It's a mix, mostly excited, happy, that satisfactory feeling of seeing something go from one stage to the end or to the other, because this feels like a new beginning. And now also getting a bit anxious for the work ahead, but fully confident that we have what it takes to achieve our targets.
That's good. That's a very politically correct answer. I'm sure your investors will be very proud. So I guess, have you always been a Daystar? How did you get into the energy industry?
So that's a great question. Getting into the energy industry, I guess I started off with what I studied, which was electrical engineering, part of senior year capstone team that we basically had a co-op. So we worked with a company for about 6 to 9 months. It was a power company. That was my first interest in seeing how the power industry works, but this was in the US. So the industry is a bit different from what we see in Nigeria, but over there they were trying to protect industrial operations from imbalanced voltage. So I started trying to think of the applications it'll have in Nigeria where, when the grid is available, it could be off balance or it could affect your equipment, how that could apply here. So that sparked my first interest, but moving back, I was initially looking for something more consulting-like. Then I met up with one of our founders, Christian, who had informed me of the company that they were setting up and asked me if I would like to be a member of the founding team of the first employees based on my background, based on discussions I had, and based on the interest I told him I had. And I decided to take him up on it, and here we are today. This was about 5 years ago.
That's a very interesting journey, honestly. So I guess now we can go straight into the meat of things. We're quite interested. So what do you think are the major drivers for African businesses to make the switch from diesel generators to solar?
I guess that answer has changed over the last few months. So prior to this year, I'd have said the key driver would have been sustainability targets, right? Trying to either become net zero, carbon neutral, or just targets set by their board or group. That was one of the early drivers. Cost savings was a driver as well, but it was not as significant of a driver in the past as it is now based on my experience. But if you look like a country like Nigeria, where we rely heavily on diesel and diesel generators, right? And the cost of diesel overnight doubled. So if you look at the start of the year, it was around 360 naira per liter. And now in some regions, it's as high as 800 to 900, right? So obviously, when you have a jump that significant, it's going to force you to go against what you're comfortable with and try and actually look for ways to manage that cost. Because think of a company starting the year with a model of what they expect their cost to be. And before the end of the first quarter, your model is completely broken because your costs have doubled or tripled overnight. So right now, I think cost savings is helping grow the industry significantly, because even in other markets, the grid prices they have are a lot more expensive than, let's say, their Western counterparts. So it makes it more difficult to do business. So it's a mix of cost savings, trying to improve the operations, and also the sustainability aspect where they are now more conscious of the impact they have on the environment.
Just building up on that quickly. So can you give us like a rough estimate of how much cost like is being saved by from switching to diesel to like solar?
Oh yeah. So if you're looking at a pure solar solution as against diesel, you can save up to 75% of your cost.
Now, I was going to say, is that based off this year, like the last few months, or is that even before this year?
So that's based on the current diesel prices that we have now, right?
Wow.
So prior to this, it was not that significant a jump. It was still a lot more affordable than diesel, but the jump this year has made it pretty clear. In the past, it would have been maybe more of a 40% savings against diesel cost, but right now it's looking as high as up to 75 or 80% less expensive than diesel.
Honestly.
And I know you work largely in the solar space, but is solar the only clean energy solution for, let's say, a commercial or an industrial player? So for example, a manufacturing plant that makes water bottles, do they have other options that are clean, sustainable, and cheap?
Yeah, so there are other options. You just always have to take into account what you have around you. Like in some other parts of Africa, for instance, there's factories that run on biomass, right? So it's in the word renewable. So the biomass could then run on either wood, could run on waste, could run on different types of items. That way they're not burning diesel or using traditional methods, right? So there's the use of biomass, which is seen to be cleaner and more sustainable. Also feeds into a circular economy. There's solar. You could also use wind, for instance, or even hydro. Hydro is seen to be clean and renewable as well. The only thing to consider is with on a project by project case, right? You want to now look around and see what's actually viable in terms of the capex requirements, in terms of the available resources. For instance, for hydro, you can't just do that anywhere. You actually need access to what you're going to generate the power from, right? Even with biomass, you need to make sure you have the available space to build such a system and have the constant feed that will go into generating the power. Whereas with solar, I don't say it's pretty easy, but there's rooftops everywhere. And there's also ground space to additionally lay panels. So it then becomes a matter of saying, do we have enough available space to make it work? And then with wind, it then becomes looking at the capex required or even just the environmental aspect of the location. Is there enough wind to generate sufficient power for your operations? So there are different available technologies or ways to tap to cleaner, sustainable power. It's now finding out on a country by country, project by project basis what would actually make sense.
From your own personal observation or opinion, what would you say most large businesses are usually drawn towards? Like, which of these options would you say is the more like the most popular one?
I mean, I'm biased, so I'll say solar. But in my opinion, I think solar it's one of the simplest ways to immediately improve your carbon footprint and start seeing cost savings from day one under the right business model, right? And it's also one of the easier systems to implement in terms of timeline for delivery versus the amount of time and capex it will require to build a large wind farm or biomass system or hydro plants.
Okay, and can you give us some use cases of where you've applied commercial solar commercial and industrial solar across? Because what I understand is Daystar doesn't just operate in Nigeria; it operates across West Africa, and I think other parts of Africa. Am I right or wrong?
That's correct. So right now we have operations in about 5 African countries, all in West Africa, and systems in 4. So we have systems installed in Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, and Senegal. And some of our clients have been banks, cosmetic manufacturers, steel recycling plants, fish farms, breweries, and bottling plants, right? So we have different types of systems. So we have systems that operate what we call solar as a service, where panels are installed at a client site and they generate power during the day to support their other sources of power. Obviously, solar being the primary and preferred source, also the most affordable. So during the daytime, they capitalize on as much solar as they can get, and the rest can come from supporting sources. And we do have some other sites where the system is a complete, or as we say, comprehensive solution. So we have a fish farm that runs, or that can run 24/7 on just solar and battery. So it's automated, it's off grid. During the daytime, the power from the sun charges the batteries and powers the farm. And at nighttime, the battery discharges and then operates the farm throughout the nighttime. So we've seen a good mix of systems that are comprehensive, all-inclusive, or then systems where it's more of a support or primarily used in the daytime.
Solar as a service is one of the things, like, I guess one of the models and frameworks you used to deliver clean energy solutions. So the question is, considering your costs as an organization or as Daystar, considering the revenue and the business model, what is that the only option, or could I purchase? Could I say, okay, I just want the capex, give me big bulks of I guess batteries and solar panels, and then I'll just go do it myself? What are the different models that you would work with?
Perfect. And that's a great question, right? So our two primary models would be solar as a service and power as a service. So solar as a service, pretty straightforward. We install panels on the site and sign a long-term contract, whereas during the tenure, whatever power is generated is fed into your operations and you just pay for what you use, right? Power as a service is a more comprehensive solution. So that's where we come in with our solar panels, batteries, backup diesel generator, or whatever the case might be. And we say, okay, you know what? Focus on your core business activities and outsource your power to us. We will take over the entire power generation, management, and operation of the site. And you just pay us a fixed fee to manage your power for you, right? So those would be the two main models. So in that case, we can go to a bank, we can go to a factory and say, you know what, your main operation here is not to run a diesel generator or make sure you have diesel, your gen is on, etc. Let us handle this for you as the power experts, and you focus on your core business activities, and you just pay us to have that done. We then offer all of this at costs that are more affordable than what they were paying otherwise. There is the option to purchase outright if a client is interested. Yeah, but that hasn't, in our experience, that hasn't been a preferred model because most corporates are looking for how to benefit immediately without having to give up the potential capex that comes with it. And that's one reason we were able to grow so rapidly, because when we came into the market, there weren't a lot of companies that offered this model of a long-term contract without a capex requirement. But it is available for corporates who are interested in outright ownership from day one.
That's interesting to hear. Like, actually building on that. So what would you say are some of like the main things that like businesses or clients are skeptical about regarding like solar?
So I guess the first question I always ask is, what happens if there's a cloud or when it's raining, or especially in Nigeria, can solar carry my AC? Right?
Because it's hot.
Exactly. Because it's hot. And there's just this misconception in the market. And I guess it's primarily from situations where people have sold, in quote, solar systems that can carry only lights and a TV, maybe a fan if you're lucky, right? And I guess the error there is in selling those systems, they aren't doing enough to explain that, yes, this system can only carry this, but that's because that's how it is sized, and that's the way to make it most affordable, right? It's a different case if you say, oh, here's solar, this is what it can carry, versus, okay, solar system can pretty much power what you want. However, in the interest of cost or because of space availability, here's what we can offer you and here's what it can do, right? So you'll be shocked the number of times I get asked if solar can actually carry an air conditioner. And then it's trying to explain that, yes, it really can. The main consideration is just how much space do you have to generate power, because that's one of the big limitations is actual space to install the panels that can generate the power that you need. So that's one big question. And then just what happens during the raining season or when it's cloudy, with everything go off, or can solar actually power a factory? And it's again trying to explain that it's power and power is power, right? Obviously, when you have cloudy situations or rainy season, the radiation from the sun is less than it would be on a sunny day, but it's still generating some power. It just would not be at, let's say, an 80, 90, or 100% as usual, right? So it'll always work. It might be lower on some days than others based on radiation, but you know it's there. And what it can carry is not dependent on the technology. It's dependent on the design. So making sure you design and install a system that is actually adequate versus ruling out what it can actually do, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, just quickly, just to also like look at it. So let's say I'm a business and I'm interested in what you're offering, but I actually don't have space. So then what happens next?
Yeah, if you don't have space, there's really not much we can do, I guess. But what we would still try to analyze what's available, what's doable. We're also big on energy efficiency. So our process usually is to audit. So we'll do an energy assessment and then we try to come up with a design. If in the design phase we notice that there isn't any space whatsoever, or the space would not allow us generate enough to give you a design that could actually work for you, then we'll let you know. If there are ways to be more efficient energy wise or just in your operations, we can also say, however, we notice this and we think replacing this, updating this could get to at least offer you a benefit than where you are now. But unfortunately, if there's significant limitation in space, there's not much we can do in that scenario.
And on the topic of, I guess, spacing and capacity, how have you managed to cope with the supply chain, I guess, challenges? Because I'm guessing you don't manufacture all the components because that would be very costly, but how do you, and knowing that, I guess, the countries in which you operate in might not manufacture a lot of those components, how has Daystar been able to manage those like supply chain issues, especially when you're dealing with large capacities, a huge number of solar PVs and battery capacity?
So great question. I guess for us, we try to plan a lot, right? So we try to always plan or have a forecast on what we would need throughout the year. Because if you try to solely get equipment on a project by project basis, you then struggle with long lead times or delayed projects. So we most times try to order in bulk, have equipment come in, and then utilize them as we close contracts to do so. But yeah, we do not manufacture. So we always have to source different equipment from different countries, right? But again, it's also about having honest, open conversations with your clients. So whenever there's something going on or there's a delay with the ports or supply chain globally, you have to let them know that this is what we're facing. We're working on it. This is our estimated timeline. And we've seen that at least having that level of transparency or openness with your customer goes a long way versus if you're just stalling when you don't have an answer and they don't know and then they're wondering what's going on. So we do our best. We try to plan as best as we can. We try to create buffers to prevent scenarios where supply chain gets to us. But like every other company, they face challenges with it, right? We just have to make sure that no matter what comes up, we're able to keep all the stakeholders updated.
Yeah. So yeah, planning is a good, I guess, risk mitigation type of tool. But let's say if it's so how would you deal with, like, I guess, foreign exchange issues, because importing, exporting, falling currencies in some countries in Africa, and how have you managed to cope with all of that? kind of uncertainty, especially when you're dealing with investors who probably want their money back in dollars?
So I mean, I guess I would say everyone is still trying to find a way to deal with FX and see what we can do. Like I would say one thing that has helped us is the fact that we have a diverse portfolio, right? So we don't only operate in Nigeria, we operate in Ghana, we operate in Senegal and Togo. So we have a good mix of different currencies at different strengths or different backings to other currencies. So that's one way to mitigate it. We still try to find ways contractually here and there, but I guess that's a problem that everyone is still trying to find a permanent solution to.
Yeah, that's really that's tough.
You said
But
that's
yeah.
tough. I think fair enough, because I guess the next question from me anyway is looking at it from a policy regulatory perspective, because knowing you're operating across different countries and I guess trading across different continents, my question is, how are there any, I guess, regulatory or policy frameworks that have helped you as Daystar being able to capture some of these markets and be able to deliver value to these commercial and industrial clients?
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint any one policy that has helped us. I guess what I would say is the regulatory framework in the countries we operate in have been fairly straightforward, which has been helpful. So fairly straightforward, fairly helpful. In Nigeria, they're at least in the CNI space. So I can't speak for the mini grid space. We're not in there. But for the CNI space, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward and clear, which is very helpful. You don't have too many rings to jump around. The main consideration there has been if you want to install a system that's over 1 megawatt, right? Where you need to get approvals from NERC. But even that process, we've gone through it and we had no issues. So it's fairly straightforward. They keep to the timelines in our experience. Just have your documentations ready. So I think it's a good shout to say that regulatory wise, we have not had any bottlenecks there so far, at least not in Nigeria. In some of the other markets, obviously they would have things that they allow, things that they don't allow for whatever reasons. The best you can do is always just get a good legal team or firm to help you navigate it, right? So there'll be some countries that will tell you they don't want a PPA, which is just a direct sale of power from solar. Obviously, it doesn't mean you rule out business there. It just means you find a different model to serve your clients with, and then it works out. So far, I would say the landscape has not been, we haven't had a bad experience with the regulatory landscape working in West Africa so far.
And just touch on that as well. So what would you say can like help push this? Like what would you say people are probably doing right now to help in terms of like bringing awareness to this or trying to bring up conversations about regulatory changes that need to be made?
So what could be done?
I feel like Asana is asking all the tough questions. Good luck.
I'd say, I mean, to have these type of important changes, it could come from just, I guess, more association of players in the industry. There is one in Nigeria that I know of, right? So I guess it's just players in the industry coming together, deciding what they need and trying to find the best way to put that forward, right? Again, so far, I don't have major complaints with how the industry has been regulated in Nigeria. If you ask anyone how to improve something, they would always find a way. So I guess it's just a coming together of different players to join heads and have one united voice. And then I think there'll be a better chance of making more changes that could help. Let's see. But so far, there's no burning challenge regulatory-wise that I feel like, oh my God, they need to change this now.
Besides regulation, so let's say, looking at it from a wider perspective, what can we do, I guess, as Africans, as people who care about a more sustainable future, I guess, cleaner, but also like with energy access, with energy security, what can we do as Africans, businesses, governments to help improve, I guess, CNI adoption on the continent?
Oh, that's a good question. To improve it on the continent. I
Yeah.
haven't thought about that one. So I would say to help improve adoption. I mean, I guess if we have, for instance, if we're able to have policies where, let's say, import duties and stuff are waived, that should help. That's one. Number two would be developing local manufacturing capacity for some of the equipment, right? So majority of, at least to my understanding, majority of the panels, inverters, batteries that are used are manufactured outside. There might be some assembling here, but still at a smaller scale. I guess if we're able to build local capacity in those in different regions in Africa, countries in Africa, that could also help the industry grow.
So would you say there are like unions that people can be involved in or people should be made aware of to help this?
To help with what exactly?
I guess to pushing like the policies or like bringing awareness to the offerings in the market and things like that.
Oh, yes. I mean, I know for renewable energy, there's a Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. That's one.
Okay.
And I'm sure when people look around, there's actually different associations or unions that they can be a part of to see how they can help speak with one voice and move it forward.
Thank you.
And Victor, you sound very like optimistic about what's currently going on, which is really good actually. But like, so looking forward, what should we be hopeful about? Or have we just hit the max in terms of like solar efficiency? Have we hit the max in terms of battery capacity? Or what should we be hopeful for? What kind of the new technologies coming out that we should probably be keeping an eye on? What are some of the new, I guess, plans? Because I saw like Nigeria released its energy transition plan, which is quite exciting. But from your perspective, in the CNI space, in helping large businesses who pay huge costs on diesel, what can they be, I guess, hopeful for a clean energy future?
So I'll say technology is always advancing. And especially in the solar space, if I start with the panels, right? The solar panels, we've noticed that over the years, they've become a lot more efficient. So you're able to maximize how much power you can generate from available space, right? When we started Daystar in 2017, the panels we used were rated about 230 watts. Right now, we use about 550 watts per panel, or I think there's a new one that's out that's either 600 or 650 watts per panel, right? So obviously the area has gone up, let's say 1.8 square meters, so about 2.2, 2.3. But as you can see, that increase in surface area is minimal compared to the power generation capacity. We're going from 230 to 600, 550. That's more than double what a panel was generating 5 years ago. So I guess as time goes on, stronger, or let me say panels that can generate more power would come out, right? Would also have better battery solutions and hopefully more affordable. So again, if we can generate more power from less space, if equipment prices improve, that would also help drive the adoption, which would then help, especially with the way diesel prices are looking at the moment. In terms of innovative technology, something that a lot of people have been talking about, different countries looking into it, a lot of funding is going into research, will be hydrogen, right? So the use of hydrogen as well to generate or store electricity. I know right now, from what I gather, it's still very, very capital intensive, and they're still working on a successful business case where it could be worthwhile. But again, this is how everything pretty much starts. It starts with the idea. It starts with early use cases, and it starts with optimization. So the more they optimize the technology, the more they're able to develop and build it, the more affordable it's to get. And then that's how it could then grow. So hydrogen is something I think would be interesting in the next, let's say, within the next decade. So anytime between now and the next 10 years. But apart from that, just simple things like the panels generating more with less space, the battery capacities increasing and also becoming more affordable would help the adoption significantly.
That's really great to know. Just quickly, would you say Daystar is currently working on something, or you don't want to give out the secret yet?
Our plan right now, especially following the acquisition, is to continue to do what we're doing on a larger scale. And we're trying to turbocharge our growth, right? So to give you context, we've been one of the fastest growing players in the market. By the end of this year, we would have about 52 megawatts of installed capacity. And that's since 2017 and now. So that's like 5 years of work. Now we're trying to take that 50 to 400 by 2025. So that gives us 3 years to do 8 times, or basically 8 times or 7 times what we did in the first 5 years. So our aim now is to continue to provide our services to leading corporates, so commercial industrial clients, and then expand. So right now, although we're in 4 or 5 countries, everything has been in West Africa. So now we're going to also take our talents to countries in the eastern and southern regions in Africa.
Victor, nice. Are you hiring?
Yes, we are hiring a ton at the moment.
No, but it's really impressive, and it's one of the good, like, personally, to see, like, I guess, clean, sustainable energy led by, I guess, young people who are passionate about economic development. It's really cool, and it's really one of the reasons why we started this podcast. So we will be rooting for you, Hasana and I, and everyone at ABS. So I guess keep shining. Asana, do you have any more questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm done being tough for today. So, but you answered really well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so before we end the podcast, the episode, there's a question we ask everyone. You may have heard it in some of our previous episodes, and it is: so if you were to travel anywhere in Africa on an all-expense paid trip, where would it be and why?
Ooh. That's a good one. So I have to think of where because I've been to a few places in Africa. Right now, yeah.
Have you been everywhere?
Right. Oh no, I wish. Not yet. I've been to a few places, but if you ask me right now, I think I might go to. It's actually a tough one. I've been to one of the places I thought I would want to go, but if you ask me, I'll probably say Mauritius.
Why?
Mauritius. I'll just have a big holiday, like disconnect from everything, everyone. Wake up looking at the beautiful blue water, and then just relax. And that's one place I want to go to. I haven't been to yet, so definitely there.